Welcome, everybody. This is Martin LeBlanc. I'm a principal at LBC Action, a mission-driven organization that tries to empower communities and with connection to the outdoors. And glad to be here today with two friends and two people that I've learned a lot from over the years, James King and CJ Goulding. Today, really want to talk about a project that they have developed and co-founded called Boys in the Woods, and also just get their perspectives on a lot of things around leadership, community empowerment, and outdoor engagement. But to start out, CJ and James, would really like to know an important question that I think a lot of people have on their mind these days with so much going on. 10 seconds left in the game. Trae Young, Damian Lillard, who takes the shot?
Man, Dame is known to take the shot, but Trae is definitely going to take the shot. So, hey, and Trae will make the shot. So, hey.
Trae will make the shot if it's against the Knicks. Against anybody else, it's Damian Lillard. It's easy.
Great day. Great day.
Well, I'll tell you, James, CJ just gave a little respect there for everything that happened last year with Trae and the playoffs with the Knicks. Both CJ and James, big basketball fans, as am I. We could call this the Marcus Smart tribute hour, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I know the two of you have known each other a while. I'd love to just hear how the two of you actually met, because even in knowing both of you for a long time, I don't know how the two of you actually met. So tell me the foundation relationship story of James King and CJ.
We had this conversation like a minute ago. I don't even know, I don't know if it was
in Minnesota
Natural Leaders event or if it was the CNN conference.
Yeah, I think it was probably the conference in Texas where I'd heard James' name from being involved with the Natural Leaders before I got on board, and so we met at the Children in Nature Network conference in 2014, and then I think my supervisor at the time went on and said, to support you all as you're running this training this summer, we're going to bring in James. And initially I was like, man, I don't need no help running this. I know how to run this. I ran this last year. I can run it again this year. But having James come in and share his perspective on natural leaders, on community engagement, on nature engagement. James is a great storyteller too. So just having him there as support, I think was the start of just continuing to get connected and things like that. And it just leveled up when he came to Seattle. We were both in Seattle, and it's been just going up since then.
It's great to hear. We also will give a shout out to Juan, who I've never heard called a supervisor, but as you said that, CJ, I realized he's now my supervisor. So shout out to supervisor Juan Martinez and his new son, Alejandro. Maybe just to give people some background, because, again, I've known both of you for a long time. We've worked together. But one of the things that I've always found so much from both of you that I've learned is just how much family and where you're from means to you. I think it's just a foundation of both what the values that make you the people that you are. So James, just to love maybe a little bit of background, on yourself and your community, because I know, being from Seattle, it just means so much to you. So I'd love you to describe that.
On the real, being a Georgia boy through and through, loving, like you said, loving family. I mean, grew up around, it's funny because, being in the Pacific Northwest right now, Juneteenth is like a thing that people are just exploring. And then to know that my family been getting together and celebrating what we call May Day, because it was told Juneteenth came in May for us and our family in our area in Georgia. So we've been able to celebrate, be together, have family reunions, and it's a tight unit when we get together. So and even when we break it down to my inner household and my neighbors always been close, where some of them came up here to Seattle for my graduation. So family and community has always been a big thing, being in Georgia and then creating that unit, that family and community unit that I have here to support not only my work, to support me, to support my mentals, and just that great connection of positivity. So yeah, I mean, you really hit it right there. So yeah, Georgia boy all day and day, every single day.
And CJ, I know, same for you. Again, I know that, your love and, being a native of Seattle, is so important to you. Maybe you can give a little bit of background on your home and your family and kind of the effect that's had in your own development as a leader.
I was family is huge for me too. I think everything when I introduce myself, when I'm doing facilitating or public speaking, I always first talk about where I'm from and not in the sense of a location, but in the sense of the people who have made me who I am today. I feel like I'm the combination of like my dad's sternness or stoicism and my mom's goofiness and creativity. My grandmother and my mom's love for nature and flowers and plants and the earth, and like my parents' just connection to kicking me out the house and getting me outside. All of those things combine to make me who I am, and that I claim that as where I'm from. I'm from like the land that I'm from is Muncie Lenape land in New Jersey. That's where my family calls home, and but I really think I'm just like I think referencing Juan again, he says family are people who put in the work, who work, who put in the work beside you, or family are people who join you in action. And so my everything about me is around that too. So like James is family. I've been to James' house and hung out with his family. James was at my house for Christmas. So like that's where that's the place.
Shout out to Aunt Jackie and her cooking. Shout out Aunt Jackie and her cooking. Yes.
Well, I know that food means a lot to you. It's funny talking about family. When I told my daughter Amelie that I was talking to both of you this morning, we do like a morning kind of like, preview of our days. I go, yeah, I'm talking to CJ and James today. She's like, why would Uncle CJ and Uncle James talk to you? Why would they be interested in you? So you guys know how you fit with that. So I think we've kind of met in that family context. And while I know like the outdoors is, I guess, kind of in some ways a platform for how we met. And the thing when I look at both of you, I look at community leaders and like really, you've put such an emphasis on building community. So I'm just curious before we kind of get in a little bit to Boys in the Woods. I know that, you've both kind of had a lot of outdoor experiences and outdoor engagement. But when you think about the outdoors from your context as kind of organizers and community leaders, like, what does it mean to you kind of personally? Just love to kind of get a little bit of background. Maybe James, I'll start with you on what the outdoors means to you at a personal level.
On the personal level, it's a connection, like I said, that family have given me. I mean, I used to spend summers and winters down and some weekends down at my grandparents and connecting to the land. My grandparents are farmers on my mom's side. So it was a big connection to land and when you harvest something, how you give it to family and others in the community, and then how you pickle stuff and create stuff straight from the ground. So caring for the ground, caring for the land, caring for animals that we in turn will eat. I mean, all of that stuff, that environmental notions and everything came from my grandparents. So that's I love it, and I cherish that moment. And then also just being born and raised in Atlanta, like you have the images of John Lewis, Dr. King, and Hosea Williams, and other leaders that are in the community. So it's just like that empowerment of young queens and kings that have to grow to do something for their community and continuously to uphold. So it's always been there. I just think that the multiple torches are passed, and it's just saying, hey, we got to continue striving and supporting and learning. So I mean, those are my connections to just leadership and the outdoors. So
thank you, James. No, I appreciate that background on kind of your creation story in a way and what that means. CJ, I'm curious from your kind of background too, what that kind of what it kind of means to you and how as you go about your daily life, some of your thoughts on the outdoors and the engagement you've had with it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, my parents kicked my brother and I out the house early and often. The no playing ball in the house was a rule that they really enforced, and so we'd be outside all the time, playing sports, playing at the park, running around in my grandma's garden, like stuff like that. We'd be outside all the time, and so for me, there's this sense of exploration and wandering that like I've always had in me growing up, and then when I got connected to that this more like dominant idea of outdoors and outdoor recreation, outdoor education and things like that, that's for me. I started to see that the outdoors as a place to like retreat to, a place to like take a mental break. I love being on the water. So like anything that has to do with the kayak, stand up paddleboard, swimming, rafting, like all of that stuff, is my it's my like it's this place for me to de-stress. And then in keeping with a little bit what James said, I think, and that connection to community, I think for me personally, the outdoors is a tool that supports. It's one of the tools that supports the ways that we can connect to other people, and so I use it as a tool to build community as well.
Well, I appreciate that. And for me, one thing that I've always learned from both of you and kind of the work that I've watched you do over the years is that I've seen a lot of, when we've been together, just being really direct and frank about it, sometimes you're the only two Black men of color at a lot of kind of, either environmental or different conferences that I've seen you at. And it's been really interesting for me because one thing that I've always really admired about both of you is I think you're very entrepreneurial, and you love being entrepreneurial and kind of creating community. So I'm just kind of interested in kind of the creation story of Boys in the Woods, and would love just to hear from both of you kind of on the genesis of how it started, because it's obviously just been such a challenging time for men, especially Black men of color. So I just would love to hear a little bit of, again, kind of how this all kind of the genesis of how this started with Boys in the Woods.
Yeah, so it started in 2019. Another co-founder, Ron Griswold, was looking to take a couple of his friends camping, who had never been camping before, backpacking actually, and they'd never been before. And so he was like, CJ, come down, help me like support this little trip. So there were about five of us, and we went on a backpacking trip in the Smokies. And it was a lot of what we heard from those guys who went on that trip, who had never been backpacking before, never really experienced the outdoors in that way, was that they didn't have a lot of those kind of spaces to be able to connect to other men, to feel okay being vulnerable, they never connected to the outdoors in that way. And that even though there was some physical challenge in spending time outside in that way, even though there was some unfamiliarity with that level of brotherhood that they were building, it felt supportive to them, and they wanted more of that. And so we started we kept that in mind. That's where the name Boys in the Wood came from. And we kept it in mind, and started to do research to see if there was something else out there that provided that kind of space. And what we found is that there are programs for men that are out there. There are programs that support mental health. There are outdoor programs, but there aren't a lot of programs that combine all of those factors and that amplify the positive effects of those in that way. And so over the next year or so, brought in James. We brainstormed about things that we could do, about things that were necessary. The pandemic hit, and so that amplified that idea. I mean, we all felt more lonely and separated from community in the pandemic. And so that just amplified, talking to friends, that need for spaces like that need for that idea of connecting to the outdoors as a space to go, something that continued to grow. And then things like George Floyd, spaces like George Floyd happened. And so like it continued to build, and reminders continue to pop up of the need for spaces for Black men to be able to connect with other Black men, and then to just have spaces to let their hair down, to say the least, to grow, to talk about mental health, to be images of positive masculinity. And we find that the outdoors can be used as a framework for a lot of that.
Thank you, CJ. James, love to hear, some of your thoughts as well, obviously, as kind of a co-founder of Boys in the Wood.
I mean, ultimately, CJ said a lot, and it's just to be in that space. And so where ideas can be ping ponged, and it doesn't have to be, we can be somewhere and we can talk about music, or we can sing songs, or we can talk about business, we can talk about stocks, we can talk about education, we can talk about these are a lot of young Black men who are raising kids. So we're talking about relationships. So those are, the multitude of conversations that we're having, or we talk about, what's going on in today, how we can be better. But we also talk about, certain things that happen in our community that others don't look at or don't celebrate or don't know. Like, we can talk about the last time we like drink Kool-Aid and what flavors, and it was just like, oh, hold up, let's go to this Black owned business in this community and let's compare it to our own, but also let's celebrate while we're in a different community, celebrating the Black owned business and that is flourishing during the pandemic, and that we can help and continue. So, I mean, like CJ said, you have all of these different elements that are just coming together, and then it's exploding or blossoming into something that's truly dynamic and beautiful. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty. So in many ways, it doesn't sound like would you even describe it as an outdoor program? Like, it seems like it's not. I mean, if you had to think about it's so interesting hearing like how you describe, like, what are some kind of, I guess, how would you describe it if you're talking to someone about, the community you're kind of building?
Is
Yeah,
it
I mean,
outdoor element to it? Yes. Is it just outdoors? I don't think so. I mean, I think, and we're still in the beginning of it. So I think that what we are looking for is the space, and what the space can be. I think it can be anywhere. It can be on the National Mall. It can be in St. Louis. It can be on the coast of Cali. It can be in the swamps of Florida. It can be in a tall tower building for a gala. I mean, I think where it is and where it's at, we're just looking for the space. I mean, CJ, you.
yeah, I mean, I think if there's one sentence tagline, I'd say we're focusing on building brotherhood and building brotherhood, mental health, and positive masculinity for Black men through the context of the outdoors. So that through the context of, like James said, you can fill in the blank with anything there. I think the outdoors provides a space for people to experience something new, to experience that physical challenge and things like that. And it sets the scene. So like the pictures are going to be outdoors. The work is going to happen like internally with the men, with our groups, with how we follow up and things of that nature. But there's no denying that the outdoors, one, provides a context for people to be able to connect, experience something different, and it makes a great setting for photos and storytelling as well.
No, I appreciate that definition of it, because the word that comes out when you both describe it is brotherhood. And so I'd love just to both as, strong, Black men that I've learned from, and I know a lot of people have, why do you think this is so critical as a specific space just for Black men?
I'll start there. I think when people talk, like, patriarchy is one of those systems of oppression that like exist in our world today. And oftentimes when people talk about patriarchy, it's just like the big bad evil villain in the room. And oftentimes the effect that patriarchy has on men, the negative effect it has on men or on Black men, isn't addressed. And so there are a lot of studies done on like how isolating that can make it be, how it can be for Black men who are like dealing with the effects of patriarchy and how they've been, molded by that society. So I think like oftentimes it's just the negative people talk about and not the positive replacement for that system. And so for me, in my mind, I think in talking to women and women of color, they're like, yo, appreciate all the help. This sounds great. Talk to your boys. And so this is us talking to our boys, literally talking to the boys, and making sure that we're like setting that positive example, that giving the positive enforcement to build an example of like masculinity and manhood and brotherhood that will then ripple and support the rest of our community and the rest of society. So that's why we're focused on Black men first. I think these tools can apply to everybody, but we're like they said, we're talking to our boys first.
So innovative, CJ. James, love to hear some thoughts you have kind of
No, I'm gonna let CJ. That was perfect right there. I mean, I don't need to add more to it. It is exactly what he said. So
Yeah, well, I'll just say I've never heard of something like this. I mean, this again, innovation just seems like a key word. But one of the things that I love in knowing both of you is, you know, a lot of programs start with like, you know, let's build out business plan, the marketing and all that. And I know you're doing all of that, but in knowing both of you, you're doers and you jumped right in. I know you've already done a Boys in the Wood in, of course, you chose to go to Minnesota in February because that's where most people want to go outside in February because you guys wanted to take it easy. So I would just love to hear some of the some of the stories and if you can share them. I'm sure a lot of this, because it's a brotherhood, is stuff that should kind of stay in your community and building that support. But if there's just anything you can share from the adventure that you had in Minnesota, I'd appreciate it, especially if anything involves dog sledding, which is like the activity I still have never done, and I'm very jealous if you got to partake in that.
yo, the dog sledding was definitely a dope story, but I think um what created the kinship in the first moment, in the first activity, is walking across a lake in the middle of the dark, and we're walking on water or we're walking on ice. And so we have to trust, we know where we're going, we got to trust our guides, we got to trust each other. Everybody got to trust CJ because he did the logistics. Everybody got to trust Ron, and we got to get across probably a quarter, less than a quarter of a mile of ice. I mean, they're telling us, that is 4 feet deep of ice. But yet and still, like Black men crossing night, going across ice, that hits a lot of things and a lot of triggers and a lot of questions, plus more in the middle of the dark. Like, so, yeah, yeah. And I think that was the first task of like trusting each other, going through, making sure we prepared, making sure that everybody is comfortable. And then you have people of different experiences with the outdoors. And we just tagging with each other and just going. And so that was like the first accomplishment for me. Going first activity of accomplishment, because I think there was more accomplishments and talking and plus more along that 5-hour ride. But yeah, that was the first one for me. So CJ.
I'll say real quick, what a story. Like, I'm behind a computer and I just got scared, like thinking about going over that ice. CJ, love to have you continue on that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try and slide in 3 quick ones. The first one was we did a hot sauna on the last night. We did a hot sauna and a polar plunge. So like we had 10, 15 guys in a hot sauna just talking, like wrapping up the weekend, talking about how important the space has been to them, and like pushing each other to like go beyond our limits. And then you would step out of there and take a dip into the lake, so into this frozen Minnesota lake. And dip in there. And so at first, the guys are going in there for like hopping in, hopping out, hopping in 5 seconds, hopping out. And I think just the idea of everyone being like pushing each other, like the times got a little bit longer. We started pushing our limits, our boundaries. And some folks ended up sitting in there for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, like really challenging and supporting themselves, supporting each other. So like people didn't want to try it. And they were like, you got it. Like you have it in you, push that limit. So that was a new experience, and it just showed the bonding and support that's possible in those spaces. I think another one is a couple of participants. We'd done a 6-mile hike. We got up to this overlook, and one of the participants said was like worn out, because we, like James said, we had people of different outdoor levels of outdoor experience, which is amazing because you get to see it outdoors as a challenge, but you also get to learn how people use the outdoors as a space to gather community. And so this was a stretch for him, and he gets to the top. He's like, man, we made it. He's like, oh man. And another participant turned to him and said, hey, we always do. Like, just cool, calm, confident, we always do. And it was just a reminder, like, to that participant and to me, that like the rest of the phrase was like, when we're given the resources and the opportunity, we always make it. And I was like, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give people the resources, give people the opportunity to deal with their mental, their physical, deal with their chickens. Like, all we trying to make sure that people have all of that, because then we always do make it. And the last one was real quick. Just, we were sitting there getting ready to eat dinner, and someone hopped on the piano, started showing off their skills, and all of a sudden, John Legend, Ordinary People got playing. And I don't think it's like, these are people who just met 2 days ago, and we all like burst into song singing John Legend, Ordinary People at the top of our voice in the middle of Minnesota, like 15 Black men. And I was like, this is just, this is the spaces that we were trying to create. So like, those are the moments that I feel like really reinforce the need for what we're doing, and the benefit of what we're doing. And I hope that we have many more.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks to both of you just for describing that, because you talked about those moments, and those moments obviously are what are helping you kind of build this community. And so I'm curious, because you are kind of in this almost, startup phase with it. You've had some of these challenges with the pandemic, and, now more than ever, especially with the murder of George Floyd, it seems like very necessary. So I'm just curious, if we're talking in, April of 2023, where do you see Boys in the Wood kind of wanting to go, and when you're kind of dreaming about it, and what success looks like for the two of you and Boys in the Wood, where do you see it being? James, maybe I'll start with you.
I just see it as a bigger network of support within the people who tag along with us and our allies who support, but still a space for Black men to grow where they see fit, once again, to be able to support themselves and their communities and their families. So that's where, I truly see the growth. I see a high end of support, man, and recognition, and not just recognition just to be recognized, but I'm saying recognition of saying, hey, this is a space that can connect you to another space, or this is a space that you should be in if you don't know, or if you feel as though you have the knowledge to support others, other Black men. So, that's where I see in the next couple of years expanding out, and plus more, man.
And we're gonna go for a little walk.
We're walking. We got like,
this is a whole chart of like what I want it to, what the ideas and the visions we have for it, what we want it to look like. But just, in short, I'm trying to dream big on my end. I see like resources to support people connecting to mental health professionals. I see us producing a documentary that tells the story of men who've been through this experience and the benefit that it has on them. I see partnerships with in the healthcare field, and so where we can talk about the benefit, we can add to the research that's being that about the benefits of nature on mental health, the benefits of community the benefits of like public health in the Black community. So partnerships with hospitals, healthcare institutions. This is next year, and I see part of my little pet dreams is like, I see a partnership for like with things like the NBA, where it's like rookie training camp, as a part of their program, they go on a Boys in the Wood retreat and are able to participate in that. I see sharing resources with other men of other communities and backgrounds. All of those things are are part of what what I'm like envisioning, and I think we can grab in over the next year.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to this, it doesn't sound like a big dream. It sounds like, you're on your way to building this, and you've already kind of started this. I mean, just hearing again some of these stories and what came out of just this first kind of, gathering that you did in Minnesota. So, how can people learn more about Boys in the Wood? And, with this audience that's listening to this, like, how can they learn more and how can they support Boys in the Wood?
I'll dive in real quick. So we have a website, boysandthewood.org. So boysandthewood.org. You can also find us on Instagram, where we'll be sharing, reports from the retreats. We'll be sharing resources, research, information like that. We'll also keep folks updated as to the pilot. We're calling this our pilot year, and we'll keep folks updated as to the rest of the pilot retreats that we have coming up. And in terms of support, I think it shows up in three main ways. I think support is network support, so connecting us to people in your network who are working in the mental health fields, who are working in the who can support with research, all that kind of thing. Second would be financial. We are completing, or our 501c3 certification is being returned to us shortly, but we're able and open to accept donations. So supporting financially is an opportunity. And then I think the last but not least is just amplifying and sharing the message. So opportunities like this, where we're able to talk about it, we're able to tell that story. Those are ways that we can be supported.
Great, thanks, James. Any thoughts from you again on how to, support and learn more about Boys in the Wood?
Man, I can say follow us. I mean, we'll take things like this and post it and share. Follow us if you know somebody who needs to be, or wants to be connected. Do so. I mean, I have a couple of friends that's been reaching out to me. It's like, when the next event. Me and my son, they probably have a son that's old enough to go, and they was like, man, we need to go so we can have a better connection. So, reach out, hit us up and see, if you want to tag along, if you can tag along, or, I even know some ladies and some mothers is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna send my son, nephew, or some young person, or somebody else that is older. Just like, I'm gonna send you over to them in the next event, because they need this space. So continue, like, support.
They need this space. I appreciate that, James. And before I say a couple last words of gratitude and appreciation, CJ, anything that you'd like, just as we kind of wrap this really inspiring, empowering session, anything that you would just like to add that we might have missed upon in this conversation?
Yeah, I just think that a lot of folks might, like James was saying, a lot of folks, we've already gotten a couple messages where they're like, why is this just for Black men? And I think the idea, I ask folks to support because, one, it will benefit people who who fit this demographic. But I think also down the line, the lessons we learn, the examples that we're able to share, the resources we're going to develop, and even the ways that we can like parallel this with other communities and groups. It's something that it ripples out and it will affect everybody. So I think just I'm excited just for the effect that this will have on the men who participate, and the people that will affect. I think, just to close, I call it selfish work because this helps me. I find rest, enjoyment, fulfillment, healing in all of this, and then I get to multiply that so that it affects other people too. So it's selfish work. I'm going to do it whether people support fully or not. But I'm calling on people to support and chime in.
Well, I want to say, just on behalf of the LBC family and community, which you're both part of, thank you. you're both change agents. You put community first, you put family first. I think, my favorite quote of Dr. King is the fierce urgency of now. And I think there is a fierce urgency of now for what you're doing with Boys in the Wood. And I would just ask everyone to support, partner, promote this work, because you're building something again that is building that community to really make that positive change in a challenging time, especially frankly for Black men. So I just want to say thank you, James. Thank you, CJ, again for just the work that you're doing again to better and empower communities. And as always, go Celtics.